Welcome back to the POMCAST. Get ready, folks. The founder, the CEO of Premier Online Marketing, Mike Shaug, is back on the POMCAST, and he is going to deliver this is going to be a really great episode. National paid search, large budget campaign management is something that you just don't hear a lot of people get into the specifics about, and to really help those large companies that run campaigns like this. The consequence of not really knowing what you're doing is so expensive when we're talking about campaigns of this size. So I'm really excited that you wanted to tackle this particular topic. We're going to kind of talk through some things that, are relative to setup and strategy. And it's all specific to this large budget national PPC campaign mindset. I know that a lot of people are going to get a ton out of this. And of course, you guys know it's Mike. He's a visionary, always has been. Premier Online Marketing continues to just absolutely make everybody else look like they don't even know what they're doing. Of course, they're a full-scale digital advertising agency down in Austin. Their meticulous and strategic approach to how they manage themselves large-scale national search campaigns is something to behold. So if you're looking for something that's got a great reputation, by the way, we make this content so that you'll have a really good idea of how to do these things and what you should know yourself. But don't ever forget, the source of this information is probably one that you might want to be connected with. With that said, Mike, I want to get right into it. Welcome back to the POMCAST.
Be here.
Of course, it's good to be here. It's your podcast. So yeah. The first thing I want to talk to you about, really just set you up, is when you're managing large national paid search budgets, what are the absolute must-haves during the setup of campaigns like that?
Absolutely. So a huge difference between a local campaign that might be targeting a municipality like, Reno, Nevada, or Plano, Texas, or something. You can waste money in exactly all the same ways as you can national, except it just happens way faster and on a way larger scale. So with national PPC, whether you're a company like we've worked with in the past, like Roku, that's promoting a new film, like with the Weird Al movie, or what did we do? We did their Reno 9/11 defunded project, or you're a legal firm looking for clients, across the entire country. When you're thinking about a large area, while you may want to target the entire United States, some areas are going to perform better than others. The amount of search volume that's addressable, you literally would need probably an unlimited budget to get to a relative amount of impression share. So essentially, the most important thing to think about when you're setting up a campaign is begin with control in mind. So if we're talking primarily about a national search or a YouTube campaign, you're going to want to make sure that you have your account set up in such a way that you can make sure that you can identify how your ads are performing in those different geographies. You want to make sure that you're precise with your geo-targeting. You want to make sure that you have an ad schedule that is probably not running 24/7, or if it is, you're bidding down on those PM timeframes by maybe 30 to 50%, so you can actually get some cheaper CPCs. You want to make sure that you're hyper-targeted on very specific audiences, and you're avoiding broad audiences and broad network expansions like search partners or display partners for a search campaign. You want to make sure that you are aggressively leveraging precise geo-targeting. If you're targeting the entire country, you don't want to target the whole country. You want to target the states individually, so you can bid up or down by state based on the state that is driving the most value for you. And probably the most important aspect is exclusions and negatives. With national CPC, typically Google Ads has a setting that is target in this area and just in this area, or target in or about. And because there's so much international search volume for the United States and doing business in this market, you want to make sure that you're just targeting in and you're not serving ads outside of the country as much as possible, because ultimately, once you start doing that, your just budget is not going to be significant enough to get you the value within the country as possible. So the most important thing is to begin with control in mind and understand that while you might be targeting a large area, you want to treat that larger area by its individual parts, by the individual states, by your top key metro areas. And in order to do that, there's a lot of things that have to go into the setup of the campaign so that it's done correctly.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking to some things around, layers of granularity, mindfulness and targeting. Is there specifically when you're talking about some of these things that you have to be thoughtful around from a targeting perspective? Is there how deep is too deep? Is there a too deep where you maybe get to a point where there's diminishing return, or it's not, you don't need to quite go that deep?
Yeah, probably. Let's say you are a national law firm for asbestos cases or something like that. You probably want to be serving ads in every single zip code throughout the whole country. But probably what you want to do initially is target by state first. And then once you see which states are performing better for you, then you're going to want to drill down into those municipalities, zip codes, so on and so forth. So you can definitely get overly granular for sure, but you want to make sure that you're not too broad at the same time. A mistake that I see in every single one of our audits, whenever we have a customer that's like, hey, we service the entire United States and we want to get customers from everywhere because we can hypothetically sell everywhere. That is true. You may sell everywhere. But what I would look to is where have you sold historically? And typically that'll end up being a much smaller chunk of the pie. And you can get a lot of that data out of the CRM for a business that has been running for a while. You can get a lot of data out of Google Analytics to see where are we showing up organically? Where is the content of the website having the most traction, or where are we kind of resonating currently? And then you can expand based on that. But typically what we see with like a national search campaign, I did one recently for a national CPA company. They do IRS mitigation, meaning the IRS is saying, hey, you have fudged the numbers on your taxes and you're about to go into an audit. This particular tax firm will go in and basically get ahead of all of that and do it in a pretty cost-effective manner. Now, in this particular instance, they target everywhere and they're spending money everywhere, but all of their business, like 85% of it, comes from 4 states. So basically what they've done is they've taken their targeting and their marketing and they've spread it evenly across all of the United States, and diminishing their allocation to where they're actually getting the most ROI. So that's a very important factor in making sure that your search, your YouTube, your display implementation is set up in a way that you can broadly target the whole area, but you can still prioritize the areas where you are getting the highest ROI. And after you've identified those areas, then it might make sense for you to break that national campaign out into more of a regional approach. Let's say, going back to that example, the 4 states in question were New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine. So if that's the case, you still want to drive business everywhere. You want to grow the profile of your business across the United States, but you might create 4 core campaigns and then split off your national campaign into separate buckets, cut your budget in half, allocate the vast majority of your budget where you are currently driving the most revenue, and then the rest of the campaign would be treated and evaluated differently. It's more of a prospecting campaign. And this is obviously all very focused on lead generation, but national campaigns are also sometimes just awareness focused. And when you're not looking for lead generation and you're looking for something like national awareness, it's really important that you are super focused on who your audiences are. Who are you trying to get in front of? Are you trying to get in front of business owners from 10 to 50 employees? Are you trying to get in front of truckers who apparently have a lot of tax mitigation problems? Like it obviously varies massively by the type of industry and prospect client that you have, but you want to be very thoughtful, specifically with awareness, because the money will just vaporize so quickly. You really want to make sure that you know who this customer is in all these different places and that you're really addressing them. If you're not using keywords and you're doing something like audience targeting, a great example would be in the industry that we come from, auto, where you can hit this very deceptive setting for interests that's auto enthusiasts or auto purchasers. What does that mean? Does that mean I'm buying a 2002 Toyota Corolla that's been vandalized twice, like my first car that I used to drive into the office, which I'm sure you remember? Or am I buying a Bentley for $300,000? They're both technically in market. But if you're a Bentley dealer, you're obviously not going to be interested in 21-year-old Mike, and you're going to be looking for maybe 36-year-old Mike instead. Not that I'm buying a Bentley right now. But obviously, it's a very different type of customer, different types of abilities. And with awareness marketing, people will tend to focus very heavily on the impression metrics. Wow, we got X amount of eyeballs. We were able to serve our message to 50,000 people. But how did that translate to user time on site, to your squeeze pages or to the pages? Are they actually reviewing the content? Because in my view, even from an awareness standpoint, impressions are somewhat useless. You have to evaluate the effectiveness of an awareness campaign based on engagement. And if you don't have the engagement, that means you just spend a lot of money getting in front of someone or interrupting their flow from a digital marketing standpoint. Maybe they're on Instagram and they clicked on your ad for a few seconds, then they went on with their day. But that didn't really provide any value for the business. So you're going to have to make sure that you understand your audience really well, that you're being very thoughtful about the type of creative that you're putting in front of them, and that you're making sure that you're not overly broad in your targeting and you're not using one of these very deceptive in-platform audiences that really means everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to unpack. I won't go into all of the details, but it's so critical for people that consume this type of content to understand that the categories at the top are often so broad. The example that you give of the industry, you're very familiar with and an expert in several industries now, but in automotive that you reference, it seems like a simple example to make the 2002 Corolla comparison to the brand new Bentley shopper. But the point of automotive being so big, it's full of niches. There are specific niches to what you may be trying to accomplish, even as a retailer, as a car dealership, of the different areas that you need to understand what the capabilities are. But then there's also the 3 tiers of automotive, what's happening at the manufacturer level and their targets and their priorities versus, tier 2, which, okay, whatever. And then down to tier 3. And so I love that you bring things like that to light for people, because I think it's very important to have that holistic mindset of a category and how there are nuances within things, how they get niched. And if you don't know what you're doing, or you're using somebody, oftentimes you're using an agency that doesn't really know what they're doing with all these things, all of a sudden your waste goes through the stratosphere and you don't even know it. If you do actually know it, it's usually too late. I don't know if you'd mind doing this, but could you walk through, you can give us maybe a short version, but could you walk through like a typical campaign structure from like keyword groups to ad copy design in this type of campaign? Your thoughts around that?
Absolutely. So when you're building a national campaign and let's go back to like a business tax kind of example. You're going to have keywords associated with corporate tax, individual taxes, sole proprietors. You're going to have different types of customers. So the first thing you're going to want to do is segment your campaign by the type of customer that you are going to be driving, because you want to be able to control budget at that level. And then the other thing is, when you look at your keyword grouping, first and foremost, don't use broad match keywords. That you will spend so much money on these variations of the keyword that, and you'll never be able to find it all. That's the funny thing, is that Google used to show you to the impression, let's say, business tax is the keyword, or business CPA would be a keyword that you brought. You could have veterinarian tax, blah, blah, blah. It's just going to be a bunch of all this stuff and you'll never catch it. And previously Google would show you the number of every single impression, but they don't do that now. They don't show about half of them. So you're going to have a lot of waste that you'll never be able to detect. So that's why for a larger campaign focus, we 100% recommend avoiding using broad match and sticking to phrase and exact. And we would definitely recommend a max of maybe 4 to 5 keywords per ad group. And the reason why this is more important at a national level than a local level is because the spends are typically far greater. You're going to want to make sure that you're really optimizing for your quality score, because for a local business, like a car dealer or maybe a lawyer, your CPC and cost per lead might not change too much. If you have, let's say, a $5,000 to $8,000 budget, your quality score is 6 instead of 8. You're not going to be. It'll be noticeable over an annualized basis, but it's not going to be as noticeable month to month. However, if you're spending, let's say, $3,000 to $10,000 a day on PPC, that loss of efficiency is going to be noticed immediately. And it can be really hard to kind of get the toothpaste back into the tube once you've built a campaign and it's not running correctly. You kind of almost need to start from scratch. So that's a very important factor, is making sure that your ad groups are really, really tight and that your keyword themes are really, really tight. The other aspect would be to think about the negative keywords. So when you think about the positive keyword, i.e., tax services for a sole proprietorship, you want to make sure that you think of all of the other businesses or the calls that you've gotten or the types of leads that you're trying to avoid, and be very thoughtful about excluding those from your keywords. And then also, we call it price gating in your ad copy. If you have a target customer that you're trying to get in front of, for instance, we work with a national custom home builder and they don't touch anything under $3 million. So you want to make sure that your ad says starting from $3.1 million. So everyone that is looking for their dream home doesn't waste your ad budget and charge you $5 a click when it's really expensive. So that's another really, really important factor. And from an ad copy standpoint, the same rule applies for local campaigns as it does for national. You want to have at least 2 expanded text ads running kind of against each other. And you want to think about them thematically. What you don't want to do is be like, hey, here's the 15 headlines and whatever. And basically it's the same ad and it's just kind of a different orientation of the headlines and tags. You want to kind of test them a little bit thematically and have some of the language. You can't have some ad lines that are the same, but you're going to want to have them mostly different and kind of optimize them against each other and see which one gets the most impression volume and then which one is getting the best conversion rate. And then on an ongoing basis. And for a local campaign, we do this on a monthly and quarterly basis, depending on spend. But if you're a national campaign, you're probably going to be optimizing your ads twice a month. So you're going to want to make sure that you're looking at your ad themes and you're rotating them out against quality score to get that quality score as high as possible. You want to be in an 8+ territory if you can. And then, making sure that you're optimizing for conversion. And another thing too, with much larger budgets and a national PPC strategy is with local campaigns, we don't tend to look at body copy as much, right? We don't, like a car dealership only has so much budget. You're going to land a ton of the traffic to an SRP page, which is going to have all the different types of trucks under $10,000. And you can't write copy for that landing page to really reflect all of the different types of used cars that they're selling in that scenario. But if you're doing a specific service, again, going back to business tax services, you're going to want to make sure that you're looking at your ad copy. You're going to want to make sure that you're looking at your SEO efforts. Are we ranking for the keyword that we're paying for over here? If not, that probably means that you need to invest more in extending the copy, adding more keyword-rich copy to that landing page, making sure that the keyword that you're bidding on is in the URL, is in the heading, is within the body copy of that landing page that you're hoping will turn that visitor into a lead. And the reason why you want to do that is going to be what helps your quality score as well, because you can only do so much from a keyword and ad optimization side if you don't have the text on the page to reflect what you're bidding on. You absolutely, with larger budgets, want to make sure that if you're bidding on a specific keyword, that keyword is what that page is about. That keyword is throughout the copy in a natural way, not too spammy, but it has to be there. There has to be that third link to really make an improvement with your quality score. And that's super important, because if you can shave, let's say $1 off of every click, multiplied by hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, that is just tens of thousands of visits, a lot of conversions, and a lot more efficiency and more positive ROI for your campaign.
Yeah, great insights. Would you be comfortable maybe sharing which ad networks and bidding strategies do you have preference for when it comes to national campaigns, and maybe why?
So it depends. I'll stick to lead generation because that tends to be what we are doing the most of
Mhm.
locally and nationally. We like Google search, and we really don't like search partners because we don't know what that is. That's getting kind of baked into PMAX campaigns, which tends to be a layer of our campaign implementation that sits on top of everything. But PMAX is kind of a campaign strategy where you will have multiple different types of creatives and you're basically targeting it everywhere. And it works really well. It's a great strategy and it's definitely where the puck is going. But if you are looking for a specific type of client, maybe you're marketing to someone that's buying a high-end boat for hundreds of thousands of dollars, or you're selling customized G-Wagons and Rolls-Royce Cullinans, and your customers are everywhere and they're willing to spend $500,000 on a car, you're going to want to make sure that you're just doing search network because you don't want to do partners. You don't want to do display partners because that's where you open up your targeting aperture to just a lot of other websites that are not Google search. If you could look at a search partner's site or their affiliate networks, you would choose to not spend your money there. You would not want your ads on Ask Jeeves or DuckDuckGo or any of these other places where you could serve ads because it's just different than what the expectation is when you're on Google search.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. You have on previous episodes, a number of times emphasized the importance of caution for people when it comes to PPC, paid search. Why is it easy to tank a big budget account? Why, I'm curious to know, and maybe something intricate or detailed, but I'm sure companies would want to know how to avoid it.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience once with one of the cars for kids. If you Google cars for kids, you're going to see all different types. You're going to see cars with a K, C, and some other ones, number 4. They're all different companies. They're all direct competitors. And I'm not going to tell you which one we worked with. But what I will say is that they were looking for car donations nationally. And they were heavily investing in PPC. I think they were spending about $350,000 a month. And they decided to take things in-house for a while. And we had all of our beautiful campaigns built out, targeting SUV donation, boat donation, like all these different types of vehicles that you could donate. And we turned it over and they seemed to know what they were doing. They'd certainly been on enough review calls to kind of like know our philosophy for managing their investment. And what they went and did is they added a lot of audiences that were not keyword audiences. They added in the car enthusiasts, and that just blew up the audience, meaning they started showing their ads to people that really were not interested in donating. They might have been interested in buying. So that was a huge problem. They started showing up for auction related searches, which is how they sell the cars, not how they get them. So they basically they were very narrowly targeted on a person that's looking for a tax break, that is trying to do something for their community. Maybe they have an extra car, or maybe like one of my sisters, they bought a house and there's a car in it and they don't really know what to do. So donation becomes, but that's not what they went from focusing very narrowly on that user. And we had spent a lot of time to get that dialed in, and then they opened it up. The other thing that they did that was really bad is they took all of the different vehicle type campaigns and they rolled them into one master campaign. And the reason why they did this is they didn't like managing all the different ads. And I'm like, if you're spending this much money, you're going to be managing a ton of different ads that most of them are going to be basically the same, but they're going to be very slightly different based on the keywords in those underlying ad groups. And the problem there is they took all of these probably 50 different ad themes that we had built out for them that we were riffing on a monthly basis, and they just went with one. And that one ad variant was really great for cars, but it was terrible for boats, and it wasn't good for campers and the other types of vehicles that they were pushing. So it went from a very siloed, strategic, segmented focus on cars, SUVs, boats, with kind of a catch-all for vehicles, to everything just car vehicle related. And that really diluted their focus. So they ended up just their cost per lead or cost per donation went through the roof, and it became basically unprofitable. And then we came back and fixed it for them. But it took us a long time. And, when you think about a customer that's spending, more than 6 figures a month, the loss of 2 or 3 months of optimization runway is a multi-$100,000 mistake. And then when you add in the value of whatever you're trying to acquire, whether it's leads, donations, subscriptions, multiply that business value on top of that, and then it becomes millions of dollars really, really quickly. So that's why we really advocate the strategy and segmentation that we do. It's very common that we'll go into a national campaign and they'll have one search campaign, one video campaign. And in that those campaigns, they're targeting like 5 different types of people. A great example that I have is I did an audit recently, and there was a particular company that was looking for business with different types of sectors. Some of it was home service related. Some of it was like lawyers. And a great example would be the demographics for users are going to be very different. If you're targeting, let's say, roofers, that's going to be predominantly men from a certain age to a certain age, a lot of people that are Latino. And then you're targeting lawyers. It's not predominantly men. It's probably an even split of men and women. And it's not like you're going to write your ads differently, but you can control your bids differently by your audience. So that's why if you're thinking about like a new customer that's different than another type of customer, you want to make sure that you have them in different campaigns, because basically Google's going to try to go after both and they're going to do it badly. So when you have a large budget to spend, as much of a pain in the neck as it might be to have 15 or 20 different campaigns, it's the best practice because that gives you that ability to control your themes really well. And it takes leeway away from Google to kind of broaden their interpretation of what they think you might be going after.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't sound like it takes much before all of a sudden you can really upset the apple cart, and the balance, regaining it, also takes time and money, right? So, I you're one of a very few number of people in the digital marketing game, especially on the paid side of digital marketing, that talks about caution like you do. And I think it's really great wisdom to share with people, because I think that they don't always realize that what might seem like a very small change, or they're just their primary interest of what's driving something that they feel like they should change. They don't realize that before you know it, it's not just, a few days, a few weeks can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in the short term while you've made those changes. But then even in the long term, it'll cost you more to try to rebalance what seems like a really trivial change. So love that. I wanted to ask you, what does your management sprint at Palm, what's that methodology look like in practice?
So this obviously needs to be customized based on dollars spent. If you have a campaign that's spending $5,000 a month locally, you're going to get a spend pacing sprint, which basically means we're looking at the last 30 days of work. Where have we gotten the most conversions? What are the notes that this account has? We really want to just spend a max of X amount of money on our brand, and max on this. So you want to pace that out for the month. And then you're probably going to do spend adjustments once or twice a week. When you have a much larger budget, that's probably going to be a daily exercise to just, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be changing your budgets on a daily basis. We would not recommend doing that. Ideally, you want to do it probably a couple of times a week, but you certainly are going to need to watch it, especially with a new launch. Once you get a few weeks under you or something, then if you set the budget to $1,000 a day, it's probably going to spend $1,000 a day. Or if the account is running hot, it'll spend $1,200 a day. Google can spend 20% more of your budget at any given time. So that's something that you have to be mindful of, especially when you open up your targeting so substantially. The other thing that we do twice a month, kind of around the 10th and the 25th of the month, are 2 performance reviews where we say, hey, it's the 10th of the month. How are we doing compared to the last 30 days, the last 60 days, the last 90 days? And what we're looking for is, number one, are we hitting our target cost per lead or our target KPIs for the month to date? And how is that doing compared to the last month, the last 90 days? And do we see a small bleed of performance? Is our cost per lead 2% worse for the last 6 months in a row? And those are things that you always want to maintain. And then at the end of the month, we basically do the same thing to make sure that we have a good looking report to present. That's on a smaller budget. If you're doing a much larger budget and investment, you're doing that on a week to week basis. You're going to have a weekly performance review, probably on Fridays. So you can set yourself up for success going into Monday or going into the weekend, whatever that peak search pattern looks like for your business. The frequency goes up. The steps kind of tend to be the same. You're doing performance reviews, you're doing your spending, you're doing your ad optimizations. But when you have a lot more spend, then that means you collect data faster. And a lot of times people say, well, you need to give an ad a month to run or something like that. That's not true. You need to give your ad a certain amount of impressions and clicks to run. And if you have if you're gathering so much data more quickly, the amount of data that your account can accrue over a 30-day period, if you're spending $100,000, is going to be more data than a small account will accrue over a number of years. So you just need to be aware of that, and you need to know that you can make decisions, or I wouldn't say decisions and changes, but observations much more quickly. And I don't mean you're going in and you're changing things every single day. You're watching every single day. You're seeing how things evolve, how things change. Are you moving closer to your target KPIs? Are the changes you're making really not bearing any of that fruit? So you just need to be very mindful of what's happening, how fast the spend is pacing, what the lead velocity looks like, what lead quality looks like, and then make very strategic changes, because you can absolutely do too much, like we said earlier, and torpedo a campaign. But it would also be an equally bad mistake to just kind of wait until next month and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I think that's really great advice for people when they're considering, like, how are we gonna save? How are we going to protect ourselves? There's just a lot of, it seems simple, but really, really, if you want the best results out of a campaign where you're spending tremendous amounts of money, Mike's giving you great advice that no, you don't need to go and make changes every day, but to make sure that you're putting your eyes on what's happening. So you're kind of identifying things as they accumulate, which could be for the good. It could be accumulating towards now we have enough points of data to say we should make a change. But looking at it every day, and that to me, that always kind of comes back to the strong advice of don't wait until it's too late, right? A lot of people, sometimes just waiting 3 days where you didn't actually take a look at anything. Yeah. It could cost you, depending on how big your campaign is, how your company is, it could cost you a lot of money, a lot of opportunities, a lot of, you have to just be really smart. And I like that you help people understand, well, it's not that you have to make changes every day, but aggregating these data points so that they lead to smart decision making. Well, of course you have to do that. So I love that. I want to focus your attention on negative keyword gaps, irrelevant clicks, bots. Essentially, how do you identify and mitigate wasted spend in campaigns like this?
Yeah, I would say the first would be at the targeting level. And this is probably the easiest one to detect. Keyword waste is the hardest because impression volume is not shared the same as it used to be. But you're probably going to find this looking at your Google Analytics easier than looking in Google Ads. But what you're going to want to look at is geography performance. And just specifically, I mean, again, if we're talking about the entire United States, then you're going to be segmenting for everywhere else. How much money is being spent in UAE or, South Africa or Argentina? And it's funny because we have very small targeted apartment campaigns, and somehow we'll get visitors from, Central America or something like that. And sometimes there are regional reasons for why that is, and it's important to understand them. But what's really important is that you identify out of area waste. And that is going to be the easiest thing to detect because it's right there. And I think you used to be able to exclude the whole world, but I believe they limited the number of exclusions substantially. So you can't exclude the whole world anymore. But you want to exclude as many countries as possible. And you can obviously shuffle your exclusions around based on where traffic is still coming. So let's say you don't get any traffic from Lithuania and you're seeing a lot of bot traffic coming in from Bangladesh, then you can obviously use that exclusion over there. We definitely see that there are some primary culprits: India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Lithuania, some Eastern European and Southeast Asian countries, the Philippines, Thailand, great examples where they have bot farms set up. And it's essentially just, I don't even know that. I don't understand the business, to be honest with you. I don't know how you wake up one day and be like, I'm going to start a farm of people clicking on fake things and fudging network performance numbers so advertisers will sell this fluffed metric. I've heard a variety of different numbers, and the number goes insane when you're talking about display. Display is like, we call it the Google dumpster fire network, because it's like there's just so much bot traffic in there, and it's so easy to interject bot traffic. And what bot traffic is a technology that's kind of acting like a human. We have bots that are clicking on click to calls, so it looks like calls are being generated when they're not. They're filling out fake information. They're going on websites and doing like two things to fudge bounce rates. And what they're typically used for is for display network providers to say, hey, look at this incredible content network that I have. We have 5 million users on it a month, and half of them are fake, because their CPM would go way down if they had less users. So they'll inflate their user and addressable market counts. And essentially, people will spend a tremendous amount of money, specifically through these kind of partners, display networks. And you'll have traffic to the website that might act something like a bad user, like someone that comes to the website and bounces under a minute or so. But a lot of that traffic, and again, I've heard different numbers, but like 30% of all display traffic is like bot traffic. And I've heard it higher too, and I don't know if I necessarily believe it, but like 30% is a big amount. And I would definitely say that banner marketing and some forms of really targeted display are a useful part of a campaign implementation. So you just have to be very thoughtful about it. For any national campaign, you want to invest in some sort of click fraud, and you need to look at you need to look at certain concentrations of obviously bogus traffic. Like, let's say you're getting a lot of traffic from a specific country that is not the United States. You want to focus on that and eliminate that to the best of your ability. You want to look at, maybe there's a certain IP address that is just, visiting your website a couple hundred times a day or something like that. Those sorts of things are important, and you have to kind of do a waste management sprint. And we don't actually do this for our local customers because they're not typically spending enough. But if you are one of our enterprise clients, that's something that we're going to look at least on a monthly basis to be like, okay, where can we get a few $1,000s back every month, every day, to allocate as well as we can towards real people that are looking for us right now. So obviously you have negative locations, negative keywords, and this is the hard part, because again, we used to be able, and we have one of our sprint items is the basically the keywords plus or minus sprint, where we are basically saying, hey, we want to add in these keywords because they make sense for our business, or we want to exclude them completely because it's wasteful and it doesn't make sense for our business. But the problem is now Google has set the threshold to be higher. And for car dealers, a great example, or motorcycle dealers, you could have like a Polaris Razor, right? And that's a keyword that you want to bid on, and you're going to broad match on that because anything Polaris Razor related makes sense. But the aftermarket Polaris Razor parts, services, axles, light bars, gear, helmets, seat belts, like there are probably 10,000 SKUs that people are looking for every day. And they're looking for that more than they're looking for the product. So as much as you can think of all of those other things, you're not going to think of everything. So you have to look at that. You've got to think about, like, how could people get to this ad wrongly? And you try to eliminate that on the keyword negative side. And then in the ad, you just make it very clear that if, using the Polaris Razor analogy, we're selling Polaris Razors, come test drive one now, and you're probably not selling it nationally. But it's a great example. Jeep is another phenomenal example where there's the aftermarket parts business just for like 1970s Jeeps. is huge. It's thousands of businesses that just sell vintage Jeep, new Jeep stuff, lift kits. Like it's a ton of businesses in every single city. And, dealerships do this all the time. Hey, I'm going to broad match Jeep. And it's like, why are we getting all these parts leads or something? We don't even sell that. We don't offer that service or that restoration. And the problem with the negative side of things is that you're only going to see, I think the threshold is 10. But typically when we would do these exclusions, we would only see 2 or 3 impressions in a month snapshot. So now you don't have that visibility. So you're just going to bleed out all of that stuff if it's not happening enough. And that's a super sketchy move that Google made. There's no reason to do that other than to encourage users to have less information on where they're wasting their money. So that's a really important factor. So again, you have to have definitely want to be using probably exact keywords more than you're using phrase, and never broad, to be honest with you. It's okay to have like a PMAX or a broad layer added to your account. But when you think about like the keywords or campaigns that are going to be driving the most amount of conversion value for you, those need to be super hyper focused on exact, because the total addressable market is huge and you're going to have tons of impressions. You're going to have too much impressions for the amount of budget. And you don't want to dilute any of that, potentially, going after keyword permutations of the product you're selling or the service you're selling that are not exactly what you're trying to sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great insights there. I mean, and you do this very tastefully, obviously, in relationship with Google. There's just so many great things about Google's ad platform. I mean, just it's the most amazing thing in our lifetime as far as digital marketing goes. It's pretty incredible. But one of the things that I love about your wisdom and what you share with your audience are things like navigating things that are maybe a little difficult to talk about when you have like a great relationship with Google and you depend on this relationship. But you guys are experts in understanding that platform. And when you are a business that runs huge national campaigns, or you're a local business and you run smaller campaigns, what you're trying to accomplish and the consequences of having somebody that really knows what they're doing versus somebody who is just kind of mailing it in, it means all the difference in the world. And so when you share with people, no matter whether a small local business or a giant national company, that hey, it's kind of important that you know that some of these things Google's put back in the black box. You don't have visibility to them. We understand that. We know that. It doesn't matter. We're not calling balls and strikes here. It's just here's the reality is that if you don't have an agency like us that we know that, and we're very careful in how we would put then campaigns together for you. You gave this example of, with Polaris, with Jeep, tens of thousands of additional accessory SKUs all over the place. And if you don't, most people, it doesn't matter where you start, in-house, you use some other agency, they're not going to know those things until the campaign's running, before there's already been way too much waste. You guys have that knowledge on the front end. So you bring that discernment and decision-making ability to your clients from the get-go, but you also know when you're stepping into something where it's like this element exists. And so, hello, Mr. or Mrs. Client, this is something that we monitor as soon as that campaign starts, so that we start to carefully manage the things that might need to be changed within the addition or the subtraction of keywords, and so on and so on. So anyway, I love all of that. I've got a few more questions on this episode I want to get to. I could talk to you probably for a 3-hour Joe Rogan style episode on this topic, Mike. But you mentioned, and so this might be a relatively short answer, but you mentioned one of the performance touch points is on the 10th of the month. Curious if you would share a little bit about how often, again, just maybe remind the audience, your performance reviews are conducted for things like this, and maybe what metrics matter the most when you're talking scale.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's one thing that you need to look at with any sort of performance analysis or any big campaign, is that the truth will end up in your CRM in some way, shape, or form. So ultimately, you can have everything set up correctly, but if you're not seeing that value translate to business, you're going to need to correlate your efforts to what starts to make the phone ring, so to speak. So that is an important factor to layer into your performance reviews. How's the business doing? What's our conversion rate? Even if you just use like really broad kind of dumb metrics, we got 10,000 visits yesterday. How many leads do we get in the CRM? What is that percentage of visit to close rate? And obviously you're ignoring a lot of things in between, your cost per lead, all these different things. But what you're looking for is, of all this value that I'm driving over here, am I actually, or this traffic I'm driving, am I getting the value at the end of it? But in our performance reviews, we look at, and I'll just keep this focused more on lead generation, because that has a tangible, there's a number you're trying to stay under for your cost per lead. You're going to be looking at your conversion rate. You're going to be looking at your cost per click. You're going to be looking at your search impression share loss due to rank. And essentially what you're going to do is, we have basically a set view that we use as our performance review view when we're looking at about 10 different KPIs: phone calls, leads, conversion rate, all conversions, store visits, like basically everything. And we're comparing how we're doing against what happened last month. We're looking at the month prior, because we want to see the trend. And if you're doing large scale PPC like this, you're going to know what this number should be by time of year. You're going to know what these KPI numbers should be from week to week. Like, it doesn't mean like you're going to know that it's $47 cost per lead one week and $52 the other, or whatever, but you're going to know that range that you want to be in, and you just want to watch that like a hawk. Let's say you have a cost per customer acquisition of $500. That's going to be the main metric that you're looking at. And then the optimization factors around that are going to be like things like conversion rate. What's your efficiency on traffic driven to the number of leads that you're actually getting and the number of leads that are closing into sales? And that's where you start to kind of change things around and looking at your traffic segments, where you're investing. And that's where you'll kind of see things like, wow, when people are actually Googling, IRS audit mitigation, that's a better keyword for us than going after auditing defense or something that's way more broad. Like, you want to be very specific. And that's where you can kind of start paring away the stuff that's kind of similar to what the core of what you're trying to get to, but not close enough to kind of like actually draw that customer in and convert that customer. So performance reviews are super important. We do them twice a month. We're looking at traffic trends, CPC. Are we spending more month over month and quarter over quarter on traffic? How is our cost per lead looking? Are we up by a certain percentage? And it's hard, again, for a small budget. If you're spending less than $20,000, you don't need to do a weekly performance review, and probably not even until you're like 50K plus. But if you are spending far more money, like 50K to 200K a month, you need to look at that probably bi-weekly, just to make sure that you're on track. What you don't want to do is be like, hey, I had an awesome cost per conversion. Let's say it's $500 one week, and I'm going to check out until next Friday, and then it's $800 or $900, and your cost per acquisition went up by 100% or something like that. And that can happen so fast. So that's another area where having a certain system of alerts that will be customized to the account. You want to be flagging things like bounce rates, which is now has a different name. You want to flag things like cost per lead. When my cost per lead is higher than this, give me a flag. If my CPC increases by X%, flag that, send me an email notification or give me a notification within the account. So that's kind of the other layer of protection that you can have. But, generally speaking, if you're managing a lot of budget, you're going to know what we would refer to as like your alpha campaign categories are, the ones that are just driving all the lead value, and your betas, which are driving more of that traffic and middle of funnel awareness. And you're going to be focused more on the ones that are driving the leads at first, and then you're going to kind of focus on the ones that are a little bit higher in the funnel.
What about with these big campaigns? What about A/B tests? Do you have any examples, or have you guys done any experiments on A/B testing that have yielded results, surprising or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, we do A/B tests, I believe, every month or every quarter for every single customer we have, and we're always testing something. We'll test A/B test different bid models. We'll take a split test of a campaign and be like, hey, this is a target CPA campaign, and this is a maximize conversions campaign, and see which one works the best. And that the results will vary from month to month, and we record them all in our system of work Monday. So we can kind of see what that story looks like. And then we test things frequently again, because obviously bid management is something that changes. I feel like every 2 or 3 years, Google will come up with some other way to basically say, set it and forget it, and do a max ROAS campaign, and then you're spending $60 on a CPC. That happens all the time. Or max conversions with no bid cap, and then you're spending a tremendous amount. But you have max impression share, but your budget is getting exhausted because you're way over investing on every single click.
Mm-hmm. In some industries, certainly in automotive, there's been a rise in chatter around third-party tools, specifically on like website providers in automotive. So somewhat relative to that, I wanted to ask you about third-party tools maybe that you have found relative to campaigns like this that you trust and that you guys integrate on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's we love Optimizer. I've used a bunch. I've used Marin. I guess I used, what was it, Omniture way back in the day. And they're all good, and they all do different things. And essentially, they help you get data a little faster than if you're poking around the account. They help you manage things at scale more easily. And I would say that the more products and services you're using, let's say you're a national e-commerce company, let's say you are the Jeep after parts superstore, let's say you're Revzilla and you're selling 500 different types of gloves everywhere in the States. Yeah. That would be a situation where you absolutely want to invest in a bid management platform like Marin, probably for the e-commerce side. They're here in Austin, great company. I've used them for automotive campaigns before. Overkill for a lot of other ones. But if, let's say, you're a national lawyer and you literally have 3 different types of litigation that you offer, you do, asbestos, something, maybe you're one of the guys that's involved with the Johnson & Johnson baby powder one, and they're just running campaigns all the time, just all the time. And you probably don't need that. You can probably get most of that value within Google Ads, or you can use a lower powered tool like maybe Optimizer. That's our favorite tool. It kind of balances use and cost. But 100%, I think it's important to really get the most out of the platform first and to really understand how the platform works before jumping over to a Marin, because it's a completely different ecosystem. And the one issue that people don't really talk about is every single time another platform comes up with something cool, Google steals it. Marin has had a number of great products for managing inventory that Google has absolutely stolen and just rolled right into their product. Calls from ads targeting, that was actually something from many different agency tools. And Google just took that and rolled it into their platform to make it better. And we're really grateful for their IP theft or their acquisitions. DoubleClick, great example, a tool that got rolled in. But you just have to be aware that you have to watch the platform and see how they're innovating within the platform to make sure that that still is compatible with the third-party tool that you're using.
Yeah, that's good advice. I can see the runway, but I got 2 last questions I want to ask you. The first is when looking at non-converting but expensive keywords, what's the decision-making process that you follow?
That's a tough one, because sometimes you'll have keywords that you just need to spend money on because that's what you do. That's where your business is. That's what you're.
Because there is marketing value sometimes, even if it's not something that's converting, it's still, there is a purpose. I tell people that all the time.
100%. I mean, the very kind of simple analogy is kind of top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. And our view is maximize your exposure as much as possible at the bottom of funnel. Go after all the ripest fruit possible, the people that are indicating that they want what you're offering or what you're selling right now, before broadening to that top of funnel. And a great example would be, again, going back to the law firm for IRS mitigation. These guys also do CPA services, but that's not where they make most of their money. But CPA, best CPA attorney or best CPA firm, super broad, doesn't really say what kind of business you are. It just says that you're looking for that category generally. But if you're looking for something as specific as, trucker IRS tax mitigation or something like that, that's going to be that's just going to be a completely different scenario. And you're going to want to make sure that you are capturing as much of that search volume at the bottom of the funnel and avoiding the spending on that top of funnel search. And it's great. And the best thing to do, if you're spending that kind of money on PPC, you absolutely should be doing SEO. The cool thing to do with SEO is like really evaluate like what are those Hail Mary, super broad, super high funnel, top of funnel keywords that we're going to optimize towards for the next year. And can we get there? And a lot of times you can. So that can be the way that you capture that top of funnel search was organically. But when you're paying for the traffic, you want to be as far down and in the middle of the funnel as you possibly can. And you also need to look at your mediums differently. I look at search really as being beneficial at the bottom of the funnel level. YouTube, Google TV, through using custom segments, which are keyword lists or website-based remarketing audiences, or, YouTube audiences or similar segments to data that you're uploading. That can be the better way to prospect. And oftentimes the impression quality, if you're thinking about, hey, I want to make someone aware of my services, it's oftentimes better to do that in video because you convey more of the message than whatever the orientation of your extended text ad is on, responsive text ad on Google. So you got to think about your mediums and be like, okay, the closer is bottom of funnel, it's search, it's probably not YouTube. YouTube will get you some conversions, but it's more in an assisting capacity. It's in introducing people to your product or service that you've never spoken with before, or it's, hey, we spent $5 to get in front of, this type of contractor or service provider. Now we're just nurturing them down the funnel because we know that the consideration window is 90 days and we just have to stay in front of that person or they're going to pick someone else the next time they search. So those are kind of the different things. Like, obviously over whatever a period of time is, I don't know what the period of time would be where you would determine whether you would turn a keyword off or not. I would probably say 30 days when you're spending a lot of money or a certain amount of budget. If you spent thousands and thousands of dollars and you don't have any conversion volume, just pause it and maybe rethink how you're targeting that type of intent. Is the landing page good? Is the messaging and the ad copy relevant and really compelling? Or is this person, or am I just going to be another stop on this person's journey before they convert with one of my competitors? So you need to be thoughtful about that.
Yeah, I don't get to talk to, like back in the day when we were talking to dealers, multiple dealers every day about their paid search campaigns and all the things they're doing. Nowadays, when I'm having conversations with people that they ask me questions about paid search, it's almost always like a B2B scenario, another business that sells their stuff to the car dealer or to the power sports dealer. And this particular question I've said a number of times, it may be that some of your non-converting expensive keywords are actually doing the thing that has always existed with marketing and advertising. And that is they might be actually getting your core messaging in front of some eyeballs, right? Yeah. Depending on what type of the medium is, right? It certainly could be in YouTube. And that's not always something that has no value to it, even though it's not tied to the category of conversion for what you want the most, which is to feed your lead addiction, right? We want more sales opportunities. That's the name of the game for every business. But I said this probably at the very beginning of paid search, every time I was doing a presentation. There is also still this value that has nothing to do with the conversion clicks. You have to be working with people smart enough to help you understand where there may be value around things that are not direct conversion related clicks. And so that's why I would tell people like you, it's like, that's why people should work with somebody like Palm, because you guys know those differences. If you just go to the one size fits all type of agency, and that's what most of the provisioners are out there, you're not going to have that even conversation to really manage budget smart. And if it's a big national campaign, again, the expenses stack up really fast.
It also depends on who you're working for in the organization. we are rarely working for a business owner that's just like, you know what, we do sometimes, like we have some of our clients in real estate that own some of the most iconic and famous architecture and buildings in Manhattan. And guess what? It's in the trust of that family that they don't sell to anybody, and they accumulate and they buy more stuff because they want to own more blocks of the city, and they want that story to be continued for generations. That is not most of our customers. Most of our customers have like a 30-day time horizon. It's usually that we're working for the sales team. And if the sales team is complaining about lead quality, then you need to make decisions fast. And obviously there has always been that argument of like, you're probably killing a valuable upper funnel campaign or a valuable touch point if you're just optimizing away for clicks. But that's why you need to look at the other things too. What's the engagement? If there's a click and no engagement, then you can know that it's a waste of time. But if people are spending 7 minutes on your website looking at a bunch of different pages and not converting, then you have a conversion rate optimization problem. That there's not a problem with that keyword. But where you have low engagement, and of course, if you have bad UI, you're not going to have good engagement no matter what. So you always need to think about that. But just kind of going back to the automotive example, every car dealer, whenever they say that you're not doing a good job, is I Googled car dealership near me, or use Toyota Tacoma, and it's like a Chevy dealer, but they have 3 Toyota Tacomas, like, and I'm not showing up, and you guys suck. Like, you're gonna show up for what your brand is. If you're a Chevy dealer, you need to focus on bidding for your terms, your core terms, Chevy Tahoe, Blazer, so on and so forth. Car dealer is great, and that's a great long-term strategy with your SEO. But you just need to understand that if someone is, why would you go after someone looking for car dealers near me or car lots? And the part that will drive everyone crazy is that the amount of search volume for car lots is like more than all of the OEM keywords combined in any market. More than Toyota dealer near me, more than Chevy dealer, BMW dealer, but it doesn't matter because we don't know what those people want. They might want a used car. Maybe they're just trying to hope that Google remembers what site they looked at last and kind of shows them that ad again, because Google just kind of jogs people's memories sometimes, but you don't want to invest in that. So there are ways to go after the top of the funnel. And I would argue that the best way to do that would be to take that super top of funnel generic category search and target it into YouTube and this would be a great experiment, target it into YouTube with a custom segment where you're going after car dealers near me, car lots, all that other stuff, and see how that custom segment compares to, I'm a Chevy dealer. We're going after all the Chevy keywords. And even though the search volume for Chevy is so much smaller than it is for car dealer, you're going to be actually getting people in the door because you're closer to the bottom of funnel and you're closer to the target of what you're actually selling.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Really great stuff, Mike. Last thing I want to ask you on this episode is, what advice would you give to a PPC professional that was going to be transitioning into managing large accounts like this?
Definitely get organized. Make sure your campaigns are organized. Make sure they're controllable. Make sure you don't have a situation where you have 20 keywords per ad group with different match types, because it's just going to be hard to manage as time goes on. And make sure you have a really rigorous process, a weekly process for how you engage with your accounts. Make sure that you have the steps that are clarified in case you get hit by a bus, someone else can kind of help out. Luckily, that hasn't happened in my career yet. But you just want to make sure that you have a very well understood process and that you're listening to content like this, that you're going to websites like CXL, and you're broadening your learning about the specific marketing strategies that you're deploying on behalf of your business. Just build your knowledge and make sure that you have a process. If you're going into the account, and this happens all the time in-house where there's not really oversight on what you're doing to get the outcome, you need to have that for yourself and make sure that you stick to it and make sure that you're kind of always looking at your workflow recipe and making sure that it aligns with how you're spending money and the cycle of your business from month to month.
I love it, Mike. So many great insights that you shared. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap on today's episode of the POMCAST. Huge thanks to Michael Shaug for joining us and sharing some legit large budget paid search wisdom. If you're an automotive or a power sports dealer, an apartment property, if you're in legal services, or just about any small business trying to navigate the fast changing world of search, remember, it's not about chasing trends. It's about staying strategic. And that's exactly what Premier Online Marketing does on behalf of their clients. You can easily follow Mike and Premier Online Marketing on LinkedIn. Just look up Premier Online Marketing. You'll find them. More importantly, follow Mike Shaug on LinkedIn. Also check him out at premieronlinemarketing.com. Depending on where you view or listen to this content, there might be an opportunity to like, share, subscribe, virtually high five us, all that good stuff. And before you know it, well, we'll be right back here with another episode of the POMCAST.
Thanks, John.